Hello and welcome to the first episode of Adults Only Let's Play. Adults Only Let's Play is a show where myself, Daniel Jones, and my wife, Coley Jones, will talk about different topics pertaining to adult life, I guess. Things such as romance, dating, sex, and we're going to do that while you watch us play various video games. This week's video game is Final Fantasy 15 Episode Dusque, the standalone demo for Final Fantasy 15, which, just on a side note, is pretty cool, and you can see it's really pretty. So, Coley, introduce yourself. How are you today?
I'm good, thanks.
So, what we're going to be talking about for this episode is 50 Shades of Grey.
Mm-hmm.
We thought that would be a good topic to break the ice for the show and kind of pop the show's cherry, so to speak. So, why is 50 Shades of Grey a good topic for us tonight?
Because I have a very different view of it, and I don't like it.
Different as how?
As in the popular opinion of it being such an amazing book, I do not agree at all.
I don't either. So we've talked a lot about this, but let's talk a little bit more. I want to know, what don't you like about 50 Shades of Grey, other than the fact that it's terribly written.
The worst written book I've ever read.
It really is. You can tell that it originated as Twilight fan fiction.
Not even that, just sentence structure. Just how it flows is the worst book I've ever read.
Well, also, they prefer to... by the way, this show is called Adults Only, so we're going to use some salty language. So if you're not an adult, don't be listening right now, please. Just turn it off and go do something else. But the author refers to the main character's pussy as, what did she call it? Do you remember?
I don't even remember.
It's like her sex. Does she call it her sex?
I think so.
Yeah.
I think so.
I think she calls it her sex, which is weird.
Yes.
It's just strange. But so other than that, what don't you like about 50 Shades of Grey?
Well, first it starts where she's a virgin in her 20s, which is absolutely fine if that's somebody's choice. But then she just meets this mysterious man, and he takes her, and he has her, and she has an orgasm the first time that she's with him, which does not... I'm sorry, guys, it doesn't happen. If the woman you were with lost her virginity to you, she didn't have an orgasm. It didn't happen. I'm sorry. You just don't. And when
even if the guy's really good, you're not gonna have an orgasm the first time?
Most likely not through penetration, no.
What if, this is maybe getting off topic just slightly, but what if you have experience using toys, dildos, vibrators?
It still can
before
be
you've had sex.
The first time you're with somebody is just sometimes not, you're learning each other. You're figuring things out.
Well, that's very true.
And the first time you're with somebody and a virgin, I highly doubt that happens.
All right, so I can see where you're coming from. I agree with that.
Another thing I don't like is if this man was not a billionaire and good looking, he would be an episode of CSI. People would be calling the police, and they would be like, this crazy man tried to bring me in a red room and do all these horrible things to me. I want him arrested and I'm pressing charges. But because he's this, billionaire and so gorgeous.
Not to mention he kind of stalks her through the first half of that book.
Yeah, pretty much.
Pretty much. He just
creepy.
kind of kidnaps her at one point in his helicopter.
It's creepy.
Yeah, it is.
And she doesn't own her womanhood. She doesn't know who she is, and she just lets this man determine who she is. And I'm not always a raging feminist, but I am when it comes to this book. Like, own your sexuality and know who you are, and don't let a man decide your sexuality for you.
I totally agree with that. I think that happens way too often in our culture now. Women judge themselves based on men, and I think this is a very prime example of that because she just doesn't know who she is, and
No,
she
not at
just
all.
he introduces her to this thing, and it awakens something inside of her, and she thinks that it's that her sexuality is intrinsically tied to his way of life, and what he's into.
Right. It becomes all about him, and she has no say and isn't a person.
But then they kind of turn it back around, though. We haven't read all of the books. We
refuse.
We've read most of the first
First
one
one.
together.
Yes.
But we have not read second and third. But it does come back around. Apparently, at the end of the third book, spoilers, he renounces his
Right.
his Red Room ways and
Right.
becomes this love-making, like, perfect gentleman.
Right, and she heals his wounds and heals why he had the Red Room in the first place, which
Which is just
Is
ridiculous.
bullshit.
Because that's not how sexual fetishes work.
no, it's not. A sexual fetish is a lifestyle, and that's your fetish, and that doesn't. Fetishes can change, but you're not going to change a person. Like that just doesn't.
Precisely.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like saying that somebody is one day attracted to women with big boobs and blonde hair, and the next day they're not attracted to them. You know?
Right. I mean, you may still be attracted
You
to
might
big
be
boobs
attracted
and
to-
blondes, and then brunettes with little boobs.
Right.
But the first attraction's not going to go away.
Right.
You just have more attractions.
Yeah.
So your first fetish most likely won't go away. You just will probably add fetishes.
Which I certainly have. So, but I guess, yeah, my main problem with it is that the books, well, it's not necessarily the books, it's the way they've been interpreted in our society.
Yes.
from the women that have read them. You have women like calling up radio stations and writing blogs about why doesn't my husband do that,
Right.
and why don't I have a man that can be adventurous like that. Well, that's not. It's not all on your man, first of all,
Right.
to be adventurous. Like, if you've never mentioned it to him before that you'd like to be tied up in a red room, then how's he supposed to know? But also, I don't know. You have more to say about that.
I listen to podcasts, and I will not mention the name of it, but there are men who call up and say, it is not in my nature to tie my wife up and to, paddle her and use a gag ball and all that stuff. It's not in my nature, and it's now what she wants. And I don't know what to do because I don't know how to be this for her, and she's saying that this is what she wants. Now, is it what she's always wanted, or does she want it because that's what the books are telling her she's supposed to want, and that's what romance is right now? Romance right now is the Red Room. And that's not romance, that's a fetish. And it's two different things. And I think women are mistaking it for, maybe they want their man to do more around the house. Maybe they want their man to have more, like initiative. Like, let's go do this. Or just put a foot forward a little bit, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you want to be dominated. They want their man to maybe be a little more assertive, but they don't have a way of expressing that. And then this book comes along and they decide, well, if we, start this fetish, that will fix everything.
Right.
And then men are like, but that's not who I am. I don't want to do that with my wife.
Right.
And so now it's throwing this wrench into relationships and marriages.
Well, because, I mean, it kind of ties back to what you said earlier. If he wasn't an attractive, rich man, I mean, what guys, married otherwise, can devote a room in their house to sex play and to tying women up?
I don't think many, because I know that your game room became
My-
the playroom. So
And that was a game room.
And
That wasn't even a sex room. That was a game
that
room.
was a video game room. Is now the playroom.
Sex barely happens in there because of all the kids' toys. But, yeah, I mean, I think it just speaks to I think you're totally right, but like people don't know how to have intimate sex the 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 way they really should or necessarily want to. I mean, I know personally, a lot of my tastes were strongly skewed and changed by porn over the course of my life, and that's not necessarily a great thing, but I think it's, and I don't think it's been as bad for me as I think it has for a lot of today's generation.
I think, yeah, that
younger
I've had a lot
generation.
of conversations through my work, and that affects a lot of people and what they think sex is and what they think intimacy is. And it's very different for men and women because women see porn differently and their roles in porn differently, and men see women differently. And it's the same with this book. I mean, these women don't. I find my opinion, and this could make many people very mad, but I believe women who are into this book don't know themselves and don't know their sexuality, and they're just latching onto this fad thing because it's what they're supposed to like, and they can't.
Well, I think it's because it is presented in a very way. I mean, those scenes are kind of sexy. Even if they're not written very well, they're still kind of sexy. So I think people get turned on by them, and then all of a sudden they think, okay, this is what I'm into.
Right, but I think that there's a difference between fantasy and reality. Like when you can fantasize about something and in your head and it's so sexy, but the reality of being tied up and not being able to get out of those binds and having a ball gag in your mouth and possibly being hit and stuff is very different. It's not the same as in your head as any fantasy. I mean, I think many people you will talk to will say, I had this fantasy, we acted it out, it did not live up to what I was thinking it was going to be. So I think these books just perpetuate this fantasy.
Yeah, and I think it's worth noting that like they try to call this S&M, and it's definitely not S&M.
No.
There's a huge difference between this and actual S&M.
Exactly.
I mean, S&M is very much about power, which this is as well, but S&M is like it's hard to describe why it's different, but it's definitely very different. I mean, you don't really even have intercourse if you're doing true S&M,
right?
And they certainly do in the book.
Absolutely, and I don't know that love is a part of S&M for most people.
No, it's definitely not.
So it's not. I think people are mistaking S&M for romance, and S&M doesn't have romance in it. That's not what S&M is, which is absolutely fine. That's not a big deal. That's just not what this is. And so now this book is portraying this as romance.
Yeah, totally. And I think part of the issue is that it just doesn't. The book and the movies also don't really respect true romance and true sex and real sex. I mean, honestly, I can't imagine how many times the authors actually had sex with somebody. I don't feel like she...
Or went to an English class and learned how to write.
Well, that too. I just don't think she has a very good grasp on what sex really is. But, I don't know. Maybe we're being unfair. Let us know. Comment. This is our first video. Let us know if you like it. Hopefully you like video games and you like to talk about sex, because it's kind of what we're going for here. We're kind of going for a little more adult side of the video game Let's Play thing. So anyway, I'm Daniel Jones. My beautiful wife is Coley Jones, and we are so glad you joined us. Thanks for watching Adults Only Let's Play Episode 1. Next week we'll be back with more.
Night
Thanks.
all.